The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet hospital corridor as William sat beside Kate's bed, watching her peaceful face. After 47 years of marriage, he knew every line, every expression that crossed her features. Today, those features seemed softer somehow, as if she was already beginning to drift away from the world they had shared together. Kate had been battling cancer for 2 years, but she had faced it with the same grace and determination that had drawn William to her all those decades ago. They had met at a small coffee shop in their hometown, both young and full of dreams. William was a struggling artist, painting portraits on street corners to make ends meet, while Kate worked as a librarian, always carrying a worn paperback novel in her purse. Their love story wasn't the kind you see in movies, filled with grand gestures and dramatic declarations. Instead, it was built on thousands of small moments, shared cups of coffee on Sunday mornings, quiet conversations during evening walks, and the way Kate would unconsciously reach for William's hand whenever they watched television together. The doctors had given them the news 3 months ago. The cancer had spread and there was nothing more they could do. Kate had taken the news with remarkable calmness, squeezing William's trembling hand and saying, "We've had a good run, haven't we, darling?" That night they had sat on their back porch, looking at the stars and talking about all the memories they had created together. Now, as William watched his wife sleep, he thought about the conversation they had yesterday. Kate had been more alert then, her eyes still holding that spark of mischief he had fallen in love with so many years ago. She had asked him to promise her something, that when the time came he wouldn't make it harder than it needed to be. "I want to go peacefully," she had whispered, "and I want you to let me." The room was filled with cards and flowers from their children, grandchildren, and the many friends whose lives Kate had touched over the years. She had been a beloved figure in their small community, volunteering at the local animal shelter, organizing charity drives, and always being the first person to show up with a casserole when someone was going through hard times. William's daughter Sarah had been by earlier, tears streaming down her face as she kissed her mother's forehead and whispered goodbye. Their son Michael had flown in from across the country, spending hours telling Kate stories about his children, knowing she could hear him even though she couldn't respond. The grandchildren had come too, each one leaving behind a drawing or a letter for their beloved grandmother. As the afternoon wore on, William noticed changes in Kate's breathing. The nurses had prepared him for this, explaining what the final stages would look like. But knowing something intellectually and experiencing it emotionally were two completely different things. He felt his heart breaking with each shallow breath she took, yet he also felt grateful for every extra moment they had together. The hospital room had become their entire world. William had barely left Kate's side in the past week, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed, eating meals he couldn't taste, and holding her hand through every moment of her journey. The staff had been incredibly kind, understanding that this couple needed space and time to say goodbye in their own way. Kate's wedding ring caught the light from the window, and William remembered the day he had placed it on her finger. They had been so young, so certain that they had forever ahead of them. In a way, they had been right. 47 years felt like forever, but it also felt like it had passed in the blink of an eye. William gently touched his own wedding band, worn smooth by decades of wear, and made a silent promise that he would honor the love they had shared for the rest of his own life. Evening had settled over the hospital when Kate's eyes slowly opened. For a moment, she seemed confused, blinking at the familiar ceiling before her gaze found William's face. A gentle smile crossed her lips, the same smile that had greeted him every morning for nearly 5 decades. "Hello, my love," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with warmth. William leaned closer, taking her hand in both of his. Her skin felt paper thin, but her grip was surprisingly strong as she squeezed his fingers. "I was dreaming about our honeymoon," Kate continued, her eyes growing distant with the memory. "Do you remember that little cabin by the lake? You were so worried about the leaky roof, but I thought it was perfect." William chuckled softly, remembering how they had spent 3 days listening to raindrops fall into pots and pans scattered around their tiny bedroom. They had saved for months to afford that humble honeymoon, but it had been magical in its simplicity. They had cooked meals over a wood stove, taken long walks along the misty shoreline, and spent hours just talking about their future together. Kate had collected smooth stones from the beach, and William had sketched her sitting on the old wooden dock, her hair blowing in the wind. "I kept one of those stones," Kate said, as if reading his thoughts. It's in the jewelry box on my dresser. I want you to have it. William nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. He knew the stone she meant. She had carried it in her purse for years before finally giving it a place of honor among her treasures. As the night grew deeper, Kate began sharing memories that William had almost forgotten. She talked about the time he had surprised her with a picnic dinner after she had worked a double shift at the library, how proud she had been when his first painting sold at the local gallery, and the way he had cried harder than she did when they found out they were going to have their first child. "You were such a wonderful father," Kate said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Sarah has your stubborn streak, you know. She gets that determined look in her eyes just like you do when you're working on a difficult painting, and Michael has your gentle heart. I see it in how patient he is with his own children." William remembered teaching Sarah to ride a bike, running alongside her for hours until she finally found her balance and pedaled away, laughing with joy. He thought about the fishing trips with Michael, the quiet conversations they had shared while waiting for the fish to bite, and how his son had always preferred catching fireflies to catching anything with hooks. "They're going to need you," Kate continued, her voice growing softer. "Sarah pretends to be strong, but she's scared about raising her teenagers without my advice. And Michael still calls me every Sunday to tell me about his week. They're going to feel lost for a while." The moonlight streamed through the hospital window, casting a peaceful glow across Kate's face. She looked younger somehow, as if the pain and illness were already beginning to fade away. William found himself memorizing every detail. The way her gray hair spread across the pillow, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the familiar scent of her lavender hand cream that somehow still lingered despite everything. "I need you to promise me something else," Kate said, her voice growing urgent. "I need you to keep living, William. Really living. Don't just exist because I'm gone. Paint again. Take that art class you've been talking about. Visit the places we always said we'd go someday." William wanted to protest, wanted to tell her that he could never imagine a life without her in it, but he saw the fierce love in her eyes and knew she needed to hear his promise. "I'll try," he whispered, and Kate smiled with relief. "And find someone to have coffee with," she added with a hint of her old mischief. "Not love necessarily, but friendship. Company. You were never meant to be alone." "My darling." William squeezed her hand tighter, amazed that even now, facing her own goodbye, Kate was thinking about his future happiness. Outside their room, the hospital continued its quiet nighttime rhythm. But inside, time seemed suspended as William and Kate shared these precious final conversations, each word a gift to carry forward into whatever came next. Dawn was breaking when Sarah and Michael arrived at the hospital, their faces etched with exhaustion and worry. They had driven through the night after William called to tell them that Kate was awake and asking for them. The family gathered around her bed, creating a circle of love that seemed to give Kate renewed energy. "My beautiful children," Kate said, reaching out to touch each of their faces. "Look how wonderful you've become. I am so proud of both of you." Sarah broke down first, tears flowing freely as she laid her head on her mother's shoulder. Michael stood stoically for a moment before his own composure cracked, and he knelt beside the bed to hold Kate's hand. Kate spent the morning giving each of her children private moments, sharing memories and offering guidance for the challenges ahead. She told Sarah about the recipe cards hidden in the back of the kitchen drawer, each one containing not just ingredients but stories about family dinners and holiday traditions. She reminded Michael about the photo albums in the hall closet, encouraging him to share those pictures with his own children so they would always remember their grandmother. "I want you both to take care of your father," Kate said, when they were all together again. "He's going to pretend he's fine, but he's not good at being alone. Make sure he eats real meals, not just cereal for dinner. And don't let him turn the guest room into a storage space. He'll need somewhere for visitors to stay." The grandchildren arrived around noon, their young faces serious as they tried to understand what was happening. Kate brightened visibly when she saw them, finding strength she didn't know she still had. 8-year-old Emma climbed carefully onto the bed, snuggling against her grandmother's side while showing her a drawing of their family. "This is you and Grandpa in your garden," Emma explained, pointing to stick figures surrounded by colorful flowers. "And this is me helping you plant tomatoes." Kate's eyes filled with tears as she studied the precious artwork, remembering all the afternoons they had spent together in the backyard, Emma's small hands eager to help with every task. 15-year-old Jake stood awkwardly by the window until Kate called him over. He had always been shy about showing affection, but today he sat on the edge of the bed and let his grandmother hold his hand while she told him how proud she was of his guitar playing and his kindness to his younger cousins. "I want you to play at my service," Kate told him quietly. "That song you wrote about summer evenings, I've always loved it." Jake nodded solemnly, understanding the honor she was giving him. Baby Lucy, only 2 years old, didn't understand the gravity of the situation but seemed to sense that something special was happening. She babbled happily from her mother's arms, reaching toward Kate with chubby fingers. Kate touched the little girl's hand, marveling at the softness of her skin and the brightness of her smile. "She won't remember me," Kate said to Sarah, "but tell her stories. Tell her about how I used to sing her to sleep and how she always laughed when I made funny faces. I want her to know that she was loved by her grandmother, even if she can't remember." As the afternoon wore on, friends began arriving to pay their respects. Mrs. Henderson from next door brought homemade cookies, just as she had done every Christmas for the past 20 years. Tom and Betty from the book club came together, sharing memories of Kate's thoughtful discussions and her talent for choosing the perfect novels for their monthly meetings. Father Martinez from their church sat with the family, offering prayers and comfort. He had known William and Kate since they were newlyweds, had baptized their children and officiated at countless family celebrations. His presence brought a sense of peace to the room, a reminder that Kate's life had been rich with faith and community. The mailman, who had delivered their letters for 15 years, stopped by to tell Kate how much he had enjoyed their brief conversations at the front door. The young nurse who had been caring for Kate broke protocol to give her a gentle hug, tears in her eyes as she thanked Kate for always asking about her studies and encouraging her dreams of becoming a doctor. Each visitor left something behind, a memory, a story, a promise to remember Kate's kindness. The room filled with laughter and tears as people shared their favorite moments with her, painting a picture of a life well lived and a woman who had touched countless hearts. As evening approached, Kate grew tired but remained alert, drinking in every face, every voice, every expression of love. She seemed to be gathering these final interactions like precious gems, storing them away for whatever journey lay ahead. William watched it all with a mixture of pride and heartbreak, seeing how many lives his wife had influenced, and knowing that her legacy would live on in all these people she had loved. As the last visitors said their goodbyes and the hospital settled into its evening quiet, Kate asked for some time alone with William. Their children understood, kissing their mother tenderly before stepping out into the hallway. The room felt different now, more intimate, as if the walls themselves recognized that these were precious final moments between husband and wife. Kate's breathing had become more labored, but her eyes remained clear and focused on William's face. She patted the bed beside her, and he carefully climbed up, lying on his side so he could look directly at her. It was reminiscent of thousands of nights they had spent this way, talking quietly before sleep, sharing the small details of their days and their dreams for tomorrow. "Do you remember our first fight?" Kate asked with a weak smile. William chuckled, remembering how they had argued about something so trivial he couldn't even recall what it was now. What he did remember was how they had both been too stubborn to apologize for 3 whole days, until Kate had finally shown up at his apartment with a peace offering of homemade cookies and a sheepish grin. "You taught me that love isn't about never fighting," William said softly. "It's about always finding your way back to each other." Kate nodded, her fingers tracing the familiar lines of his face with feather-light touches. Even now her touch could calm his racing heart and steady his breathing. They talked about their wedding day, how nervous William had been that he would stumble over his vows, and how Kate had whispered, "Just look at me," when she saw his hands shaking. They remembered their first apartment, so small they had to take turns in the kitchen, and how they had painted every room themselves, ending up with more paint on each other than on the walls. "I was so scared when Sarah was born," Kate confessed. "I had no idea how to be a mother. I thought I would break her if I held her wrong or fed her too much or not enough. But you were so calm, so confident. You made me believe I could do it." William remembered those early days, how Kate had worried over every little thing but had been the most natural, loving mother he had ever seen. She had sung lullabies in a voice soft as silk, had walked the floors for hours when the babies were colicky, and had somehow always known exactly what each child needed, even when they were too young to tell her. And when Michael came along, Kate continued, you were the one who was terrified. You kept asking how we could possibly love another child as much as we loved Sarah. But the moment you held him, I saw your heart just expand to make room. They reminisced about family vacations in their old station wagon, how they had driven across the country one summer with 2 cranky children and a trunk full of snacks and games. They had seen the Grand Canyon, visited Yellowstone, and stayed in dozens of roadside motels, creating memories that their children still talked about decades later. Kate grew quiet for a while, just studying William's face in the dim light from the hallway. I want you to know, she finally said, that every single day with you was a gift. Even the hard days, even when we disagreed or worried about money or stayed up all night with sick children. Every ordinary Tuesday, every rushed morning, every quiet Sunday afternoon, they were all precious to me because I got to live them with you. William felt tears sliding down his cheeks as he listened to his wife's words. He thought about all the times he had taken their everyday moments for granted, assuming there would always be another Tuesday, another Sunday, another chance to hold her hand while they watched television or to kiss her goodbye before leaving for work. I need you to understand something, Kate said, her voice growing serious. When I'm gone, I don't want you to feel guilty about being happy. I don't want you to think that moving forward means forgetting me or loving me less. The greatest gift you can give me is to live a full life, to find joy again, to remember our love with happiness instead of only sadness. William wanted to protest, wanted to tell her that he could never be happy without her, but he saw the fierce determination in her eyes and knew this was important to her. I promise I'll try, he whispered, the same promise he had made the night before, and Kate smiled with relief. Outside their window, the city was settling into sleep, but inside their small room, William and Kate continued their final conversation, each word a treasure to be held close, each shared memory a bridge between their past and his future. The love that had sustained them for 47 years seemed to fill the space around them, tangible and comforting, a reminder that some things are stronger than even death itself. The middle of the night brought a stillness that seemed to wrap around William and Kate like a gentle blanket. Kate had dozed on and off, but each time she woke, her eyes sought William's face as if she needed to reassure herself that he was still there beside her. The steady rhythm of the machines monitoring her vital signs had become a familiar background music to their final hours together. Around 3 a.m, Kate stirred and asked William to help her sit up a little. She wanted to look out the window, she said, to see the stars one more time. The view from their room faced east, and though the city lights obscured most of the night sky, a few bright stars were visible in the darkness. Kate gazed at them with wonder, as if she were seeing stars for the first time. We used to wish on stars when we were young, she whispered. Do you remember? Every shooting star, every first star of the evening. We made so many wishes. William remembered those nights, lying on a blanket in the backyard while they were dating, Kate pointing out constellations and making up stories about the pictures they formed in the sky. What did you wish for? William asked softly. Kate turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the faint starlight from the window. I always wished for time, she said. More time with you. More time to watch our children grow. More time to see the world and read all the books and plant all the gardens I dreamed about. And you know what? I got so much more time than I ever dared to hope for. Kate reached over to the bedside table and picked up the small notebook she had been writing in for the past few weeks. William had seen her working on it but had never asked what she was writing, respecting her privacy even in these final days. Now she held it out to him. These are letters, she explained, for birthdays and anniversaries and special occasions after I'm gone, for Sarah's 40th birthday, for when Michael's children graduate from high school, for your 70th birthday next year. I wanted to make sure I could still be part of those moments, even if I can't be there in person. William's hands trembled as he accepted the notebook, overwhelmed by the thought and love that had gone into each page. He could see Kate's familiar handwriting, slightly shakier now but still unmistakably hers, and he knew that these letters would become some of his most precious possessions. There's one for Sarah when she goes through menopause, Kate said with a weak laugh. And one for Michael when he retires. There are even a few for the grandchildren when they reach certain ages. I tried to think of all the times when they might need their grandmother's advice or just want to feel my love. as dawn began to break outside their window. Painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold, Kate seemed to find a burst of energy. She wanted to talk about practical things, where she had hidden their important documents, which neighbor had the spare key to their house, and how to work the temperamental washing machine that only she had ever been able to operate properly. "The life insurance papers are in the blue folder in the desk drawer," she told William, "and I've already planned everything for the service. Father Martinez has all the details. I want it to be a celebration, not a funeral. I want people to tell funny stories and sing songs and remember all the good times we shared." William listened carefully, committing every detail to memory, though he knew Sarah and Michael would help him with all these arrangements. It comforted Kate to know that everything was organized, that her family wouldn't have to make difficult decisions while they were grieving. "And the garden," Kate continued, her voice growing stronger as she thought about her beloved backyard. "The roses need to be pruned in February, and the vegetable plot should be turned over before planting season. I've left detailed instructions in the kitchen drawer, but Sarah knows what to do. She's been helping me for years." Kate had always found peace in her garden, spending hours tending to her flowers and vegetables, her hands in the earth connecting her to something larger than herself. William had often found her there on difficult days, kneeling among her plants, seeming to draw strength from the soil and the growing things around her. "Promise me you'll keep the garden going," Kate said. "You don't have to do all the work yourself, but don't let it become overgrown. I want it to still be beautiful when spring comes, full of life and color and hope." As the morning light grew stronger, Kate grew quieter, but her eyes remained alert and loving. She had said everything she needed to say, had given all the instructions and shared all the memories that seemed important. Now she seemed content to simply be present with William, to soak in these final moments of their life together. The nurses changed shifts, and the day staff began their rounds, but Kate's room remained a sanctuary of peace and love. William held her hand and watched the sun rise over the city where they had built their life together, where they had raised their children and created a community of friends who had become like family. It was going to be a beautiful day, and somehow that seemed fitting for what Kate had always called the next adventure. By mid-morning, Sarah and Michael had returned to the hospital, along with Sarah's husband David and Michael's wife Jennifer. The children had been left with babysitters, as everyone sensed that this day would be different from the others. The family gathered around Kate's bed, creating a circle of love and support that seemed to give her comfort and strength. Kate had grown weaker during the morning hours, but she remained conscious and aware of everyone around her. Her breathing had become more shallow and she needed oxygen now, but her eyes still held that spark of awareness and love that had defined her throughout her life. She squeezed hands, offered weak smiles, and whispered words of love to each person in the room. "I want to tell you all something," Kate said, her voice barely above a whisper, but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Being your wife and your mother has been the greatest privilege of my life. You have given me more joy than I ever thought possible, and I want you to know that I am not afraid. I am ready for whatever comes next." The family listened in reverent silence as Kate continued speaking, her words coming slowly, but with purpose. "I want you to take care of each other. Be patient with each other's grief. Some of you will want to talk about me all the time and others will need silence. Both are okay. Grief doesn't follow rules and everyone will find their own way through it." She looked directly at William as she spoke her next words. "Don't make any big decisions for at least a year. Don't sell the house or move away or change everything right away. Give yourself time to adjust, time to figure out who you are now. And don't be surprised if you feel angry with me sometimes for leaving. That's normal too." Sarah was crying quietly, holding her mother's other hand while David stood behind her with his hands on her shoulders. Michael sat in the chair beside the bed, leaning forward to catch every word Kate spoke. Jennifer stood by the window, tears streaming down her face as she thought about how much Kate's guidance had meant to her over the years. "I want you to know that I will always be with you," Kate continued. "Maybe not in the way you're used to, but I will be there. When you smell lavender or see a cardinal in the garden, when you find a recipe written in my handwriting or hear a song that reminds you of me, love doesn't end when a person dies. It just changes form." Around noon, Kate asked for some time alone with each family member. She spoke privately with Sarah about raising teenagers and maintaining traditions, reminding her that being a mother is about love, not perfection. She talked with Michael about being patient with himself as he learned to navigate grief while being strong for his own children. She spent time with David and Jennifer, thanking them for loving her children and for making her family larger and stronger. She had always treated her children's spouses as her own, and they had brought so much richness to family gatherings and holiday celebrations over the years. But it was her final conversation with William that would stay with everyone who witnessed it. As the afternoon wore on and Kate's energy began to fade, she asked everyone else to step out of the room so she could have these last precious moments alone with her husband. 50 years ago, I promised to love you in sickness and in health, for better or worse until death do us part, Kate whispered, her hand barely able to squeeze his fingers now. I have kept that promise and I am keeping it still. Death isn't going to part us, my darling. It's just going to change how we're together. William could barely speak through his tears, but he managed to whisper back, I have loved you every single day for 47 years, and I will love you every single day for the rest of my life. Kate smiled, that radiant smile that had captivated him since their very first meeting, and closed her eyes with a peaceful expression. Sing to me, she requested softly. That song you used to sing when the children were babies. The one about the mockingbird. William's voice broke as he began the familiar lullaby, the same song he had sung to their children during late-night feedings and bedtime routines. His voice was rough with emotion, but Kate's breathing seemed to slow and deepen as she listened to the melody that had been the soundtrack of their family life. As William sang, Kate's face relaxed completely, and for a moment she looked like the young woman he had married all those years ago. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting a golden glow across the room, and everything felt suspended in a moment of perfect peace and love. The song ended, and Kate's breathing continued soft and steady as she rested in the comfort of William's voice and presence. As the golden afternoon light began to fade into evening, Kate's breathing became even more gentle and peaceful. William had called the family back into the room, and they all stood or sat around her bed, holding hands and creating a circle of love that seemed to fill the space with warmth and comfort. No one spoke much now. They all understood that they were witnessing something sacred, a transition that called for reverence and silence. Kate's eyes remained closed, but occasionally her lips would curve into the faintest smile, as if she were seeing something beautiful that the rest of them couldn't yet perceive. Her hand remained in William's, and though her grip had weakened considerably, he could still feel the familiar warmth of her skin against his palm. Around 6 in the evening, as the sun was setting outside their window, Kate opened her eyes one final time. Her gaze moved slowly around the room, taking in each beloved face, memorizing the people who had made her life so rich and meaningful. When her eyes met William's, she mouthed the words, I love you, with the last of her strength. I love you, too, William whispered back, leaning close so his words could reach her. Forever and always, my darling Kate. She smiled that radiant smile one more time, closed her eyes, and with a soft sigh that seemed to contain all the contentment and peace in the world, Kate took her final breath. The room fell into a profound silence that felt different from any quiet they had ever experienced. It wasn't the absence of sound, but rather the presence of something ineffable, something that spoke of completion and fulfillment and love that transcends physical existence. Nobody moved for several minutes, as if they all needed time to absorb what had just happened. William continued to hold Kate's hand, his thumb stroking gently across her knuckles as he had done countless times during their marriage. Her face looked serene and beautiful, younger somehow, as if the years and the illness had simply melted away. The late evening light streaming through the window seemed to surround her with a gentle glow. Sarah was the first to move, reaching out to touch her mother's face with trembling fingers. She looks so peaceful, she whispered through her tears. Like she's just sleeping. Michael nodded, unable to speak, as he watched his father continue to hold his mother's hand, as if he couldn't quite bring himself to let go of their physical connection. The nurses entered quietly when William finally called them, and they moved with gentle efficiency and deep respect. They had seen many deaths in their careers, but there was something special about this one, something that spoke of a life fully lived and a love fully realized. They gave the family all the time they needed, understanding that these final moments of goodbye were precious beyond measure. Over the next few hours, as the family made phone calls and began the difficult process of notifying friends and making arrangements, William remained by Kate's side. He found himself talking to her, telling her about the sunset outside the window, and promising her that he would take care of their garden, just as she had asked. He told her about all the people who had called to send their love, and how much her life had meant to so many others. Father Martinez arrived to offer prayers and comfort to the family, and he spoke about Kate's faith and her generous spirit, how she had been a light in their community and would be deeply missed. The funeral home staff came later, and they too treated Kate with the utmost dignity and respect, understanding that they were caring for someone who had been deeply cherished. In the days that followed, as news of Kate's peaceful passing spread throughout their community, William was amazed by the outpouring of love and support. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects, each one sharing a story about how Kate had touched their lives. The service was exactly what she had wanted, a celebration filled with music, laughter, and stories that honored the beautiful life she had lived. Jake played his guitar and sang the song Kate had requested, his young voice strong and clear as he honored his grandmother's memory. Friends shared funny stories about Kate's terrible cooking when she was young and her legendary Christmas cookies in later years. People talked about her kindness, her wisdom, and her ability to make everyone feel important and valued. William stood at the podium during the service and spoke about the love he and Kate had shared, how she had made him a better man, and taught him that the secret to a good life was paying attention to the small moments and cherishing the people who matter most. He ended his remarks by saying, "Kate always said that love never really ends, it just changes form. I feel her love every day, in every memory we created together, and I know that love will continue to guide our family for generations to come." Months later, as William tended to Kate's garden and watched her roses bloom in brilliant splendor, he realized that she had been right about everything. The grief was real and profound, but so was the love that continued to surround him. Kate's letters arrived at perfect moments, offering comfort and guidance when he needed them most. And slowly, carefully, William began to build a new life that honored their past while embracing the future she had encouraged him to seek. The silent goodbye that had moved so many people to tears had been just the beginning of a love story that would continue to inspire others for years to come, proving that the deepest connections between human hearts are indeed stronger than death itself.